What's up, guys and girls? It's Vision. 11th Hour Games just released the first post of Hype Week leading up to Season 3. This one covers Primal Hunts, Primordial Uniques, and Primordial Exalted Items, and I wanted to take a look at this with you guys so you have an idea kind of what to expect with this mechanic that is going to be new with Season 3. So, let's take a look. Alright, so let's start with what is a Primal Hunt. A Primal Hunt is a mechanic, a randomly generated mechanic, pretty similar to how the Nemesis system works. This is something that you'll find in the campaign and then also Echoes. The first time you interact with this, you go into a side area and you're tracking this Rift Beast. When you kill the beast, it leaves behind 3 hatchlings, and you'll pick one of the hatchlings, and then all Rift Beasts going forward will have attributes related to the hatchling that you chose. So, an example of this, you go into the Primal Hunt, you kill the beast at the end, and then you'll get to pick 3 hatchlings. And what EHG shows in the picture here, as some examples are, Shoulder Vines. It looks like it gains poison damage here, the beast, but it drops affix shards. You could choose this. One of the other choices could be it gets horns that are charged with lightning, so you can expect lightning damage, but all of the beasts going forward in this lineage will drop glyphs. And then one of the options here says Magma Head. It gets an additional head that spits magma, but anything in this line of beasts going forward will drop rare boots. So you go in, you hunt a beast, you pick one of the 3 hatchlings. Whatever traits of the hatchling you pick, that will move forward into the future beasts, and so on and so on. So this starts out with 4 evolutions, and they say that later on you can find ways to add like more evolutional choices as you go. So like in this picture it shows 6, but 4 is the baseline. And that's essentially what it is you're crafting a beast that is going to give rewards and gain different abilities based on what you pick. So this is kind of something you interact with repeatedly over the course of several maps or different zones. So after you've initially kind of interacted with the system and you have a beast and an evolutionary line going, you're going to start finding rifts in your echoes or different zones. There are 2 types of rifts. There are torn rifts, and this is the most basic one. You find the rift in your map, you interact with it, and it spawns a bunch of monsters that are basically offspring of your main rift beast, so like smaller versions of them, and they drop loot that is based on the rewards that you've picked. So torn rifts, you find it, you interact, spawns a bunch of enemies, and then it drops loot related to your evolutionary line. You interact with these enough, and eventually you find a mysterious rift, and the mysterious rift lets you go into the ancient era, and you hunt your rift beast, and then you're presented with another evolution option. So kind of how with Nemesis, you have a chance to empower it a few times before you fight the final Nemesis. This is kind of like that, where you go and you're doing torn rifts in your map, spawning offspring, and then after so many torn rifts, then you have a chance to encounter a mysterious rift that will let you evolve your creature and go on from there. So this system is going to be nice for, obviously there's the general rewards here, but it's also essential for any build that is going to be using a Primordial Unique or a Primordial Exalted item, because both of those new item types are tied to this system. So as you're killing these beasts, you're finding different types of currencies called primordial materials. There's some like these, and then you find different bones. And basically, these are the currency that you're using. So instead of these enemies dropping gold, they're dropping these currencies. And you're going to use those with a new NPC called the Huntmaster. And you can see here in this picture, there's like an inventory where you can purchase different primordial uniques. There's a new crafting material called a Rune of Evolution that lets you make the Primordial Exalted items. And then there's also different kind of like, these are like random loot, I don't want to say loot boxes, but they're bags of goodies is how EHG describes it, which could have different materials like gold, crafting affixes, memory amber. So you can also spend your materials on that if you don't want a Primordial Unique or a Primordial Exalted item. So, speaking of these Primordial items, I guess I should get a bit into what a Primordial item actually is. So there's two types, Primordial Uniques and Primordial Exalted items. The catch with Primordial items is that a character can only have one equipped. So, Primordial Unique or Primordial Exalted, you pick, you can have only one Primordial item. So, Primordial Uniques are uniques that are considered to be stronger than a regular unique. So, we've had some of those teased. Here we go. So items like this: Triumph Skull, +2 to all minion skills, summon a Tyrannosaur minion, +3 Tyrannosaur melee damage per strength. These are some of the different Primordial uniques that were teased. So, like I said, with Primordial items, you can only have one. As a trade-off, these are supposed to be stronger than just regular uniques. So, what about Primordial Exalted items? The Primordial Exalted item is going to be attached to this Rune of Evolution. And how Rune of Evolution works is you take an item with at least one Tier 7 affix. You can have multiple Tier 7 affixes, but what the Rune of Evolution does is it chooses one of those and turns it into a Tier 8. So this is the only way that Tier 8 exists in the game. It picks a Tier 7, makes it Tier 8, and it moves it down into a Primordial Sealed affix slot. So normally an item has 4 affix slots. You have your Sealed affix slot. Now there's a 6th Primordial Sealed affix slot. So that doesn't compete with a regular Sealed affix, so you can still seal an affix with Glyph of Despair. You'll have your Primordial Sealed affix, so these Primordial Exalted items can have 6 affixes total. Tier 7 is supposed to be between 50 to 100% more powerful than a Tier 7, so you can expect some pretty big numbers there. One of the teasers they showed, for example, I think it was +6 to Meteor skill. Normally you can only get +4 to a skill level with Tier 7, so Primordial Exalteds look like they could be pretty powerful, especially for, I guess, if you're building around a skill that really wants those extra skill points. It's going to be tough, though, to overall compete with the power of a legendary, but the option is going to be there with these new Primordial Exalted items. So that's a quick look at Primordial Uniques and Primordial Exalted items. I guess the important thing to remember there is that you can only have one. One other thing about this Hunt Master too, you find him in Chapter 10, and then later on you can find him in Mysterious Rifts. So like I said, you're doing the Torn Rifts, you find a Mysterious Rift, that's where you're doing your evolution. He'll be there too, you can interact and trade with him there. So that is the Hunt Master. So when do you find the Primal Hunt mechanic? They don't say when you first find it in here. I'm guessing since it's kind of tied into the new chapter thematically, the Ancient Era stuff, it's possible that we won't find this until Chapter 10, when you can first interact with it. But beyond that point, you're going to be finding these in your echoes. I guess we don't really know yet if you have to interact with it in Chapter 10 to make it available in Echo, so I guess we'll see about that when the patch comes out, but the mechanic itself can be in Campaign and your regular Monolith Echoes. Alright, so to wrap this up, this look at the Primal Hunts and Rift Beasts, I kind of want to give my thoughts on this and how I think it'll impact the game, if at all. The Primal Hunts themselves, I think it's going to come down a lot to how strong are the beasts. If you're doing a Torn Rift, how strong are the offspring that it spawns? If they're kind of scary to fight, then you might avoid them if you're playing hardcore. Kind of how the champion enemies are right now. Champion enemies are kind of scary until your build's a little more fleshed out. And the reward trade-off, glyphs, affix shards, drops rare boots, that kind of stuff you get just naturally from playing the game. So there's not much of a downside to doing this mechanic unless the enemies it spawns are super scary. So there is that. As far as Primordial Uniques and Exalted items go, The thing with Primordial Uniques, one thing I forgot to mention earlier, when you buy a Primordial Unique from the Hunts Master, it has a chance to roll legendary potential then, which means that you can turn the Primordial Uniques into legendaries. Right now, the name of the game is your character is trying to get as many uniques with legendary potential as possible, like fleshing out your character in legendaries basically, because I mean, you have the stats of a unique item plus whatever crafted stats that you would get or want from an exalted item, so they're already really strong. You can do the same thing with Primordial Uniques. Sure, you can only have one, but they're also supposed to be much stronger than regular Uniques. It's going to make it really tough to... It's going to make it really tough for Primordial Exalted items to compete with that. And this is why. A lot of skills in the game don't necessarily need the +6 to skill level. That's kind of like the big draw why you would go for a Primordial Exalted item. There are some skills that would where you feel like you want to take every point in the tree. +6 could be nice for that if you're getting like a bunch of more damage or something and ramping up the damage of your main skill. But stuff like if you're getting like a tier 8 health or something, it's nice to have, but it can't quite match the power overall of something that you might get from a unique affix from a unique item. So, and then your character can only have one of these. I don't think this is going to have a very major impact on how you build and gear out a character. It is something, I think basically what it's going to come down to is a lot of your final character build is going to revolve around whether or not there are any primordial uniques you want to try to work in and trying to get high legendary potential on those, and doing the same thing we've been doing, making strong legendary items to put onto your character. There will be some niche cases, I think, where a primordial exalted item might be really good for your build, and that option's going to be there too with the Rune of Evolution. So that's kind of what I think about the system. As long as it's not annoying to interact with, there's not really much of a downside. It's going to be nice to, I guess, see new things popping up in your echoes. One thing that I've always wanted to see more of in this game is kind of variety to break up the monotony of running echoes, and now in your echoes you can find these rifts and interact with them, build a beast to offer different rewards, and it's kind of a win-win as long as the enemies are not going to be annoying to fight. Primordial uniques and exalted items, I don't think they're going to have a major impact on how you're gearing or building a character. We'll just kind of have to see what items are out there. Like I said, I think it's going to revolve a lot around how strong the primordial uniques are. And then there will be some niche cases where a build might like to have a primordial exalted item in. So anyway, guys, that is the Primal Hunts and kind of my first impressions of the Primal Hunts and new primordial items. Season 3 is coming soon, guys, August 21st. I'm looking forward to getting in and messing around a bit with the system and experiencing it for myself. I hope you guys are all doing well and hyped for the season coming up. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for checking out the video. As more information comes out with Hype Week, I'll do more of these videos kind of focused on some of the new systems that are coming out that we'll be able to interact with. But anyway, guys, I hope you're all doing well. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you all soon. Peace.